Welcome to Creata classes. In this lecture, we will take down the problems related to areas and the perimeter. A small protocol for this lecture. The protocol is that I will show you the question, you have to pause the video and you have to try to solve the question on your own. By doing so, your brain will open to analyze the question, how to approach and how to analyze the question. Okay, this you will understand. So I want this small protocol that you should follow. Okay, after that I will tell you how to approach the question, how to analyze the question, and what are the various fundamentals that we have used to solve the question. So I expect the protocol to be followed. So before wasting any further time, let's begin with our questions. The first question is, if the ratio of areas of two square is 225 is to 256, then the ratio of their perimeter is, 4 choices are given. Okay, let's approach the question. Our first step, we will visualize and observe the question. The question is talking about two squares. Okay, let's have two square. The ratio of area of these two square is 225 is to 256. Means the first square is smaller and the second square is bigger. We know all the four sides of square are equal. Let's denote the side of our first square as A1 and the side of our second square as A2. We know the formula of area of rectangle, that is length into width. Here for the square, all the sides are same, that is length and width are same. So we got area of the square as side square. Here side of the first square as A1 and side of the second square is A2. So we got area of first square as A1 square and area of second square as A2 square. And the ratio of area of both the square is given as 225 is to 256. So we got A1 square upon A2 square is equal to 225 upon 256. On solving, we got A1 upon A2 as 15 upon 16. That is the ratio of side of both the square is 15 is to 16. Moving further, in the question it is asked for the ratio of the perimeter of both the squares. And we know perimeter is the sum of all the sides of the figure. Here all the four sides of the square are equal. So we can say the perimeter of the square is 4 times the side of the square. So the perimeter of the first square will be 4 times A1 and the perimeter of the second square will be 4 times A2. Let's take the ratio. We got 4A1 upon 4A2. On putting the value and solving, we got the ratio as 15 is to 16. That is the ratio of the perimeter of both the square. So let's see what are the various fundamental and the approach we have used to solve this question. The first fundamental that we have used is, a square is a type of rectangle which is having all the sides as equal. Okay. Area of the rectangle is length into width. Here for the square, length and width are same, that is the sides of the square. So we got area of the square as the square of the side. Further, on the basis of same fundamental, we have got the perimeter of the square. The perimeter is the total length of the boundary of a figure. All the sides of the square are same, so we got the perimeter of a square as 4 times the side of the square. So based on these two fundamentals, we have approached the question. One thing to be noted here, we have used the formula of the rectangle. You may note a separate formula for the square, that is area of the square is square of the side and the perimeter of the square is 4 times the side. These are the separate formula of square, but no need to remember these formulas if you know the basic definition of perimeter, and if you know the formula of rectangle, you can easily got the formulas for the square. So let's move to the next question. The question is, the perimeter of the two squares are 24 cm and 32 cm. The perimeter in centimeter of a third square equal in area to the sum of areas of these squares is, 4 choices are given. Let's approach the question. Our first step, we will visualize and observe the question. Let's study the question. The question is talking about two squares. Let's have two square. The perimeter of the first square is 24 cm and the perimeter of the second square is 32 cm. And we know perimeter is the sum of all the sides of the figure. Here it is square and we know the property of the square, that is all the sides of the square is same. So we got the perimeter of the square is 4 times the side of the square. Let's denote the side of the first square as A1 and the side of second square as A2. The perimeter of the first square is given as 24 cm, that is 4 times A1 is 24, and perimeter of the second square is given as 32 cm, that is 4 times A2 is 32 cm. On solving, we got A1 as 6 cm and A2 as 8 cm. Sides of the first square is 6 cm and the sides of the second square is 8 cm. Okay, we got the sides of both the squares. Moving further, the question is further talking about the third square and we have to calculate the perimeter of the third square. Let's have a third square and let's denote the side of this third square as A3, A1, A2 and A3. Further, it is given as area of the third square is equal to sum of area of first two square. Means area of third square is equal to area of first square plus area of second square. And what is the formula of area of a square? The area of the square is square of the side. Okay, that is A square. Okay, here A is the side of the square. And area of the first square is A1 square and area of the second square is A2 square and area of the third square is A3 square. And we know A1 is equal to 6 cm and A2 is equal to 8 cm. On putting the value and solving, we got A3, that is the side of the third square, as 10 cm. And in the question, we have to calculate the perimeter of the third square. And the perimeter of the square is 4 times the side of the square, that is 4 times A3. On putting the value, we got 40 cm. That is the answer of the question. So again, what are the fundamentals we have used in this question? The first fundamental that we have used is the perimeter of the square is 4 times the side of the square. And the area of the square is square of the side of the square. So based on these fundamentals, we have solved the question. Let's move further. The next question is, the perimeter of the top of the rectangular table is 28 meter, whereas its area is 48 meter square. What is the length of its diagonal? 4 choices are given. Okay, our first step, we will observe and visualize the question. In this question, a rectangular table is given. Let's have a rectangular table. And the perimeter of the top of this rectangular table is given as 28 meter. Means the perimeter of this rectangle is 28 meter. Okay. And further, area of this rectangle is given as 48 meter square. We have to calculate the length of the diagonal of this rectangle. We know the perimeter and the area of this rectangle. So how to approach this question? First of all, we will proceed with the sides of this rectangle. Once we have got the sides of this rectangle, then we will use the Pythagoras to find the diagonal of this rectangle. Let's see how we move in this question. First of all, the perimeter of this rectangle is given as 28 meter. Let's assume the sides of this rectangle as A and B. These sides are A and these sides are B. And we know the perimeter of a rectangle is twice the length plus width. That is 2 times A plus B. So we got 2 times A plus B is equal to 28. Further, the area of the rectangle is 48 meters square. And we know area of the rectangle is length into width, that is A into B is 48. Moving further, we got 2 equations and we have 2 variables. Let's solve both the equation. On solving, we got length and width of this rectangle as 8 meter and 6 meter. We got the sides of this rectangle. Moving further, we have to calculate the diagonal of this rectangle. And we know the property of the rectangle, that is all the angles of a rectangle are 90 degree. If we observe this triangle, can we say this triangle is a right angle triangle? This angle is a 90 degree angle. Further, for this right angle triangle, we know 2 sides. We can apply the Pythagoras and we can get the third side. So we got 8 square plus 6 square is equal to diagonal square. On solving, we got the diagonal of this rectangle as 10 meter. That is the answer of the question. Okay. So the fundamental that we have used in solving this question is the first fundamental, the perimeter of a rectangle, that is twice length plus width, and area of the rectangle is length into width. And thirdly, we have used the Pythagoras theorem to finally get the answer of this question. Okay. One thing to be noted here is that if you got any question related to diagonal of a rectangle, then the approach that you have to use is you have to find the sides of the rectangle. Once you got the side of the rectangle, you can apply the Pythagoras because all the angles of a rectangle is 90 degree. Same fundamental can be applied to the square. All the angles of a square are a 90 degree angle, so we can apply the Pythagoras in the square also. So let's move to the next question. In a triangular field having sides 30 meter, 72 meter and 78 meter, the length of the altitude to the sides measuring 72 meter is, 4 choices are given for this question. Let's observe the question. A triangular field is given and the 3 sides of this triangular field are given as 30 meter, 72 meter and 78 meter. And we have to calculate the altitude to the side 72 meter. This side is 72 meter, means we have to calculate this perpendicular distance from the opposite vertex. That is the altitude for this triangle. So how to approach this question? If somehow we are able to find the area of this triangle, then we can apply the formula, that is area of the triangle is equal to half into base into height. Here this side BC will be the base of this triangle and this will be the height of this triangle. So once we know the area of this triangle, we can apply this formula to calculate the altitude AD. So this is the approach we will use. So firstly, we have to calculate the area of the triangle. The 3 sides of this triangle are given. So how we will calculate the area? We will use the Heron's formula. That is, area of the triangle is equal to root S into S minus A into S minus B into S minus C. Here S is the semi-perimeter, that is A plus B plus C upon 2. So on putting the value, we got semi-perimeter as 90. Let's put the value in our formula of area of the triangle. On putting the value and solving, we got area of this triangle ABC as 1080 meter square. That is the area of the triangle. But we have to calculate the length of the altitude AD. So let's use the formula, that is area of the triangle is equal to half into base into height. Here BC is the base and AD is the height. On putting the value and solving, we got height as 30 meter. That is the answer of the question. So the fundamental that we have used in solving this question is, so the first fundamental, we have used the formula of area of triangle as root S into S minus A into S minus B into S minus C. Further, we have again used the formula of area of the triangle as half into base into height. So based on these 2 formulas of area of triangle, we have solved this question. Let's move to the next question. The question is, the radius of the wheel moving on a road is 8 3/4 centimeter. How many rounds it will take to complete 55 meter distance? 4 choices are given. Let's approach the question. Our standard rule, the first step, we will visualize and observe the question. In this question, a wheel is given which is moving on a road. The radius of the wheel is given as 8 3/4 centimeter. The question is asking about how many rounds it will take to complete 55 meter distance. Means we have to find out how many rounds this wheel will move to complete the distance of 55 meter. If somehow we are able to find how much distance this wheel moves in 1 revolution, then we can calculate the rounds it will take to complete this 55 meter. So first of all, we will calculate the distance the wheel take to revolve 1 round. And what is that distance? That distance is the outer boundary of this wheel. That is the circumference of this wheel. We know circumference is the linear distance of the boundary of the circle. Means the circumference for this wheel will be this complete distance. And this distance will be the distance the wheel complete in 1 complete revolution. So let's calculate this distance. We know the circumference of a circle is 2 pi r. And the radius of the circle is given as 8/3/4, that will be 35/4. Let's put the value. Here we are taking pi as 22/7. On putting the value and solving, we got the circumference of this wheel as 55 cm. Here this 55 cm is the circumference of this wheel, that is the distance this wheel will cover in one revolution. Okay, in one revolution the wheel is covering 55 cm. So the revolution required to complete the distance of 55 meter will be 55 into 100 upon 55. We have converted 55 meter to centimeter by multiplying by 100. On solving, we got the answer as 100. So it will require 100 revolution to complete the distance of 55 meter. That is the answer of the question. So let's see the fundamental that we have used to solve the question. The fundamental that we have used is the distance covered by the wheel in one revolution is equal to the circumference of the wheel. The circumference is the linear distance of the boundary of the circle. So the fundamental we have used is in one revolution the wheel will cover the distance equal to its circumference. And the second fundamental that we have used is the formula of the circumference of a circle, that is equal to 2 pi r. Got it? So based on these fundamentals we have solved the question. So let's move to the next question. Find the perimeter of a semicircle of radius 28 cm. 4 choices are given. So our first step, we will visualize and observe the question. The question is talking about a semicircle of radius 28 cm. And we have to calculate the perimeter of this semicircle. And we know what is perimeter. Perimeter is the length of the boundary of the figure. Here the figure is this semicircle. So we have to calculate the length of this boundary of this semicircle. The radius of this semicircle is given as 28 cm. Means this distance will be 28 plus 28, that is 56 cm. We got one part of the length of the boundary. Let's calculate the other remaining part. Further, we have to calculate this semicircular boundary. And this is semicircle, means this will be half of the circle. That is, this distance will be equal to half of the circumference. And we know circumference is the total length of the boundary of the circle, that is 2 pi r. So this circumference of the half of the circle will be equal to 2 pi r upon 2, that is pi times r. And r is given as 28 cm. So we got semicircumference as 28 times pi. Okay, we got all the boundary of this semicircle. Let's add all the boundaries. So we got the perimeter of this complete figure as 144 cm. Okay, that is the answer of the question. So the fundamental that we have used in this question is the first fundamental. We have used the basic definition of the perimeter, that is perimeter is the total length of the boundary of the figure. The second fundamental we have used is semicircle is half of the circle. So the circumference of the semicircle will be half of the circumference of the complete circle, that is 2 pi r upon 2, that is pi times r. So based on these two fundamentals we have solved the question. Let's move further to the next question. The next question is, if the perimeter of a circle A is equal to the perimeter of the semicircle B, what is the ratio of their areas? 4 choices are given. Let's approach the question. First of all, we will observe and visualize the question. This question is talking about a circle A and the semicircle B. Let's have both of this figure. The perimeter of this circle A is equal to the perimeter of this semicircle B. And we have to calculate the ratio of the area of both of this figure. Okay, let's approach the question. So firstly, let's assume the radius of this complete circle A as r1 and radius of this semicircle B as r2. The perimeter of the circle is basically the circumference of the circle, that is the total length of the boundary of the circle. And we know the circumference of a circle is 2 pi r. So we got the perimeter of the circle A is 2 pi r1. Here radius is r1. Moving further, the perimeter of this semicircle B will be equal to length of the total boundary of this semicircle. Here we have assumed the radius of the semicircle as r2. So this total distance will be equal to r2 plus r2, that is 2 times r2. And length of this distance will be equal to half of the circumference. And we know complete circumference is equal to 2 pi r, that is 2 pi r2. Here radius is r2. So we got length of this boundary as half of the circumference, that is 2 pi r upon 2, that is pi times r, that is pi times r2. Here radius is r2. So we got perimeter of this complete semicircle as 2 times r2 plus pi times r2, that is r2 times pi plus 2. Got it? On solving, we got r1 upon r2 is equal to pi plus 2 upon 2 pi. And in this question, we have to calculate the ratio of the area of both the figure. The area of the first figure, that is the circle A, is equal to pi r square. And here radius is r1. So we got the area of first figure as pi r1 square. Moving further, the area of the semicircle will be equal to half of the area of the circle. That is, area of the semicircle B will be equal to pi r2 square upon 2. Okay, got it? Area of the complete circle is pi r square and area of the semicircle will be half of the complete circle, that is pi r square upon 2. And we know r1 upon r2 is equal to pi plus 2 upon 2 pi. On putting the value and solving, we got the ratio as pi plus 2 whole square is to 2 pi square. Okay, that is the answer of the question. So the fundamental that we have used to solve this question are, the first fundamental we have used is the circumference of the circle is 2 pi r and area of the circle is pi r square. So based on these fundamentals, we have solved the question. Okay, got it? Let's move to the next question. The question is, the diameter of each wheel of a car is 70 centimeter. If each wheel rotates 400 times per minute, then the speed of the car in kilometer per hour is. 4 choices are given. Let's approach the question. Our first rule, we will observe and visualize the question. The question is talking about the wheel of a car. The diameter of the wheel is given as 70 centimeter and we have to calculate the speed of the car in kilometer per hour. Basically, we have to calculate how many kilometers this car travel in 1 hour. That is the speed of the car, kilometer per hour, that is how much distance the car has covered in 1 hour. Okay, got it? Moving further, in the question it is also given each wheel rotates 400 times per minute. Means in 1 minute the wheel rotates 400 times. So first of all, we will calculate in one rotation how much the wheel covers the distance. The one rotation of the wheel means the distance, that is the circumference. It means that in one rotation of the wheel, the car will cover the distance which is equal to the boundary of the wheel, or which is known as the circumference of the wheel. And we know the circumference of a circle is 2 pi r. And in the question, the diameter, that is twice the radius, is given as 70 centimeter. So we got the circumference as 70 into pi, that is 70 pi. And pi, it is given as 22 by 7. On putting the value, we got the circumference of the wheel as 220 centimeter. It means that in one revolution of the wheel, the car will travel 220 centimeter. Moving further, in the question it is given as the wheel rotates 400 times per minute. So we can calculate the distance covered by the car in 1 minute as 400 into 220. In one revolution it is covering 220 centimeter, and in 400 revolution it will cover 400 into 220 centimeter. We got the distance the car has traveled in 1 minute. And for calculating the distance covered by car in 1 hour, we have to multiply this by 60. Okay, 1 hour has 60 minutes. So we got the distance covered by car in 1 hour as 400 into 220 into 60. We have got the distance the car has covered in 1 hour. But the distance we have received is in centimeter. Let's convert the centimeter to meter by dividing it by 100. further the meter to kilometer by dividing it by 1000. On solving, we got the answer as 52.8 km per hour. That is, the speed of the car is 52.8 km per hour. Got it? So let's see the fundamental that we have used to solve the question. The fundamental that we have used is the distance covered by the wheel in one revolution is equal to the circumference of the wheel. The circumference is the linear distance of the boundary of the circle. So the fundamental we have used is in one revolution the wheel will cover the distance equal to its circumference. And the second fundamental that we have used is the formula of the circumference of a circle, that is equal to 2 pi r. Got it? So based on these fundamentals we have solved the question. So let's move to the next question. The question is, 4 circles of equal radii are described about the 4 corners of a square so that each touches 2 of the other circles. If each side of the square is 140 cm, then area of the space enclosed between the circumference of the circle is. 4 choices are given. First of all, we will observe the question. The question is talking about the 4 circles of equal radii which are described around the 4 corners of the square. Let's take a square, and in the question it is given as the side of the square as 140 cm, means all these 4 sides will be equal to 140 cm. And from the 4 corners of the square we will form the 4 circles. All these 4 circles are having equal radii and these 4 circles are touching each other. It means that all these 4 circles will be touching at the midpoint of the side of the square. And the side of the square is 140 cm. So we got all this distance as 140 upon 2, that is 70 cm. That will be the radius of all these 4 circles. So we got radius of all these 4 circles as 70 cm. And in the question we have to find the area of the space enclosed between the circumference of the circle. Means we have to calculate area of this shaded region. Got it? This shaded region is the enclosed area between the circumference of the 4 circle. So let's approach the question. First of all, we have got the radius of the circle as 70 cm. Okay, that is the half of the side of the square. So we can calculate the area of the circle as pi r square. Pi is 22/7 and radius is 70 cm. So we got area of the circle as 15,400 cm square. Further, can we say area of this sector will be 1/4 of the area of the complete circle? So we got area of this sector as 15,400 upon 4. Similarly, area of this sector will also be equal to 15,400 upon 4. Similarly, area of all these 4 sectors will be equal to 15,400 upon 4. Let's add all these 4 sectors. On adding, we got area of these 4 sectors as 15,400. Okay, got it? Further, can we calculate area of this square? The area of the square is equal to a square, that is square of the sides. Here the side of the square is given as 140 cm. So we got area of the square as 140 square, that is 19,600 cm square. Further, in the question we have to calculate the area of this shaded zone. We have calculated the area of this square. Further, we have also calculated the area of these 4 sectors. If we subtract area of these 4 segments from the area of the square, can we get the area of this shaded region? Let's do so. On putting the value and solving, we got area of this shaded region as 4,200 cm square. That is the answer of the question. Okay, got it? So the fundamental that we have used to solve this question is the area of the circle is pi r square and area of the square is a square, that is square of the side of the square. Got it? Let's move to the next question. If the perimeter of a square is 80 cm, then what is the diagonal of the square? Okay. Let's approach the question. In the question, a square is given. Let's have a square and perimeter of this square is given as 80 cm. And we know the perimeter of the square is 4a, that is 4 times the side of the square. So we got 4a is equal to 80. On solving, we got the side of the square as 20 centimeter. And in the question, we have to calculate the diagonal of the square. And we know all the sides of the square are equal. So all these 4 sides will be equal to 20 centimeter. Okay. Further, are you able to observe this triangle is a right angle triangle? Why? Because all the 4 angles of a square are 90-degree angle. So we got this triangle as a right angle triangle, and we know 2 sides of this triangle. Let's calculate the hypotenuse by applying the Pythagoras. On applying the Pythagoras, that is diagonal square is equal to 20 square plus 20 square. On putting the value and solving, we got the answer as 20 root 2. So the fundamental that we have used to solve this question is the perimeter of the square is 4a, and the second fundamental that we have used is the Pythagoras theorem. Based on these 2 fundamentals, we have calculated the diagonal of the square. Okay, got it? So we have done with this lecture. In the next lecture also, we will take down the questions. So thank you very much for being with Creata classes. Bye for now.